see you. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Keith Sellers. I'm the President and CEO of the Washington, D.C. Economic Partnership, and I'd like to welcome you all today to the WEDC Futures Forum. A little bit about WEDC, for those who don't understand what it means. It's We the People of Washington, D.C. Did anyone get that before? Okay. For over the past 19 years, the partnership has convened founders, consumers, and government leaders to events just like this one today. We were challenged by the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development a little bit over a year ago to bring South by Southwest to Washington, D.C. So what you see today is a culmination of that effort. We've done this 3 times this year. One was we partnered with the By the People's Festival. The second iteration of that was DC Startup Week, and today's is the Futures Forum event that we have today. We hope to bring a little bit of that spirit here today, and hopefully you all will experience lots of thought leadership during today's program. At this time, I want to thank Mayor Muriel Bowser for her support in this effort. Under the guidance of our mayor, who will join us later today, the district is positioned to continue its prominence as a leader in global city. We could not continue to do this without her support. I would also like to recognize our key partners at the WEDC House. PEPCO, who's our founding partner of the WEDC House. Thank you, PEPCO, for all of your support. And also the Office of Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development, John Valchicchio, the Interim Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development. John and his team, including Karima Woods, who's the Director of Business Development, have been supporters of the partnership as well as development in DC's technology sector. At this time, I would like to welcome John Valchicchio.
Good morning, everyone. My name is John Valchicchio. I'm Mayor Bowser's Chief of Staff. This summer, I took on a summer project and became the interim deputy mayor for planning and economic development. Some of you might be saying summer is over, so why are you still here? Well, the heat and humidity is still here, so am I. So I just want to thank Keith and the team at the partnership for pulling us all together. They have had activation at South by Southwest for the last several years, and if you go to South by Southwest, or if you haven't, you've probably heard about that activation. And one of the things that Mayor Bowser always challenges us on is to show people that we're not your grandfather's Washington, D.C. And by that, the stodgy government town that goes to sleep early at night. What we see now is a vibrant D.C. where we have creatives, technologists, and restaurateurs. Last night, I was at the French ambassador's residence for the unveiling of the Michelin star restaurants. And I was talking to some of the folks, my French is not great, but I was talking to some of the folks about how this guide has really put DC on the map around the world as a culinary destination. So we have a lot to be proud of. So I also want to thank Karima Woods, who serves on our team in DemPed. She told me that we needed to recreate South by Southwest in DC. So Keith outlined some of the steps we've taken. Today is another manifestation of that. And I said to Karima, well, we should pull together all those dreamers, innovators, disruptors, and all those folks who have a vision for what DC and the world can be. And she said, great, we'll do it at 9 a.m. I didn't believe her that everybody would be here, but I'm so excited to see such a packed room. So it's a testament to you, it's a testament to the vibrancy of DC, and all that we do in government is support what you can do in the private sector. We know that we don't have all the answers, and that's what today's about. Mayor Bowser sees every challenge and sees it as an opportunity for change to bring about a better DC. So when you think about today, really the question that you have is what if? right? So what if we have a housing crisis in DC that we need to, or we have a housing crisis in DC that we need to solve, right? So what if we set out a path to create 36,000 new homes by 2025? And that's what Mayor Bowser has challenged us to do. There'll be discussion in the coming weeks about our comprehensive plan. And you're probably sitting here saying, why is he talking about the comprehensive plan? Well, it's going to take all of our voices to talk about the DC that we want to see for the next 10, 20, and 40 years. So I hope you all will join us in that conversation. Also, there's 702,000 disenfranchised Americans in Washington, D.C. And so the mayor said, what if we set out on a bold new pathway to become the 51st state? And you saw that manifest itself just last week. Was it just last week? Just recently? At the U.S. Congress, where the mayor, along with Eleanor Holmes Norton and Chairman Mendelson, laid out who we are and what we want to become, which is the 51st state. So I say all this to say that we're here today to celebrate the innovation of DC, but we're also here to engage you in the work that we do every day to make DC a better place. So thank you, one, for being here. Thanks to our friends at PEPCO for stepping up and being a founding partner. And we look forward to being with you here today and continuing the conversation beyond. Thanks so much, everyone.
At this time, I'd like to welcome and introduce Melissa Lavinson from PEPCO Holdings.
Thanks, Keith. Good morning, everybody. And I was just saying to Keith and John, we don't need to be South by Southwest. We're going to be North by Northeast. And so, welcome to the inaugural North by Northeast conference. On behalf of PEPCO, again, I also want to welcome everybody to WeDC and thank the Economic Partnership, Keith and team for hosting today's event. And also want to take a minute to recognize that today has been declared Energy Efficiency Day in the District of Columbia and around the country. So there is much that we can do together and that we can do individually to actually save electricity and cut carbon and really make a difference by working together. We can actually help and really make a difference in solving our climate crisis. And that's something that's really important to PEPCO. I know that's really important to a lot of folks in this room. And when you think about it, that's really what something like WeDC is all about in the Futures Forum. It's about working together to make a difference. And the partnership has convened a dynamic group of businesses, makers, entrepreneurs, leading organizations that are all working together to create what we really want to become, which is that capital of inclusive innovation. And we are excited at PEPCO to be a part of that. We've been operating in the district for more than a century, and our mission is to power a cleaner, brighter future for all of our customers and communities. Our teams work every day to modernize our grid, to enable it to create that clean energy future, a future that's more decarbonized, a future that's more digitized, more distributed, and more democratized, and one that can really create opportunities for innovation for everyone. We really envision a future that's different than today. It's a future in which we provide the platform for customers, energy and climate solution providers, electric vehicle owners and drivers, operators, as well as renewable generators to all make things happen so that we can make sure that we leave the planet, in a way that future generations can enjoy like we enjoy today. And so to achieve this, we know we can't do it alone. We know that it's going to take more innovation, and it's going to take all of us working together to make it happen. So that's really what today is about. It's about understanding what's possible. It's about making it here in DC, and it's about exporting it around the country and around the world to show that here in DC, we are innovative, we are creative, and we've got the solutions right here to make things happen. So again, I'm looking forward to a great day. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thanks to the partnership for putting together, and thanks to the mayor and her team for being a part of it as well.
Great, I guess I'll just kick us off then. Welcome to the panel discussion for Connected DMV, a smart region movement for Greater Washington. I'm really excited to be here with this group of individuals to share with you some details about our vision for a connected DMV across DC, Maryland, and Virginia. My name is Carl Darren. I'm the Vice President and Program Lead for Connected DMV at the Greater Washington Board of Trade. And in my background, I have a little over 25 years of experience in management and technology consulting, focused on leading large complex transformation programs related to critical infrastructure. And this is certainly a large complex program, and it's related to very important critical digital infrastructure, which we'll spend a little bit of time getting into. I'm really pleased to be here with a distinguished group of panelists, and I wanted to just give an opportunity to each of them to introduce themselves and share a little bit about their background. Radha, do you want to begin?
Great, thank you. Good morning. I'm Radha Muthaya. I'm the CEO of the Capital Area Food Bank. I've held that role for the last year and a half, and prior to that, over my 25-year career, have really spanned both the private as well as nonprofit sectors, really with the theme of looking at how to create effective partnerships across both and with sort of state, federal, and local governments to be able to create sustainable impact for everyone in various communities. Good to be here.
Sure, I'm Steve McKnight. I'm from Virginia Tech. My current role is Vice President of the National Capital Region. That will be transitioning to something we're very excited about as Vice President of Strategic Alliances. And a lot of what you're hearing about today from the panel is very important to us on strategic alliances. Virginia Tech has been in the greater Washington area for over 50 years. Our presence is expanding. As Virginia's land-grant university, we have a presence in every county. And it really have, as our motto says, ut prosum, that I might serve, a commitment to serving the communities in which we operate and making sure that we have the best educated students coming out of our university that have positive impacts, not just on the economy, but society. And so we're thrilled to be here. I'd like to thank the organizers of the panel as well as WeDC for inviting us to share some of our views on how we see the region and Connected DMV.
And I'm Melissa Levinson with PEPCO. I head up government and external affairs for PEPCO, and am also really excited to participate in an effort that's being led by Greater Washington Board of Trade on Connected DMV, and many of us here are part of that effort. And really, when you sort of think about it, it is those connections, is how we create those connections to achieve sort of a smarter DMV. A DMV that actually can allow for those opportunities, allow for us to solve some of the problems that we are going to be discussing on this panel today, but also at the conference. So we're just excited to be a part of it and really recognize the role that we have to play as an infrastructure provider in that conversation.
Pete Solano from MedStar Health. We're the biggest healthcare provider between Baltimore, DC, and Northern Virginia. We have 10 hospitals and 350 outpatient locations. We're making a big move, as everyone is in healthcare, to the home, and I work in innovation.
Great, thanks to all of you, and it's it's a distinguished privilege of mine to be here moderating with this panel of leaders. And I thought before we get into some questions for the panel, it would be helpful to provide just a little bit of background on what is Connected DMV. So at the Board of Trade, we took a look at the region and the constituents in the region, and we came up with the mission for Connected DMV to establish Greater Washington as the nation's leading digital region. And we knew that in order to do that, we needed a really broad and comprehensive framework, and also a broad-scale collaboration across the region. So what we did was we went out and pursued our collaboration strategy, which started with going to the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, which represents the 24 jurisdictions in the metropolitan statistical area. And we entered into a partnership agreement with COG to establish a public-private partnership between the Board of Trade, which represents industry and associations, and COG, which represents the local city and county governments. And then we went to the Consortium of Universities of the Washington metropolitan area, which represents 17 colleges and universities that call Washington and the region home. And we entered into a similar partnership agreement with them, making it a public-private academia collaboration. And then we went to WMATA, which, as you all know, operates the metro and bus transit. And they operate as a regional authority, have expansive digital assets and capabilities, and they joined Connected DMV as a strategic partner. And then finally, we looked at the community and realized there are a number of individuals who live and work on military bases, and that's the significant part of the community that was missing in our collaboration strategy. So we went to the Military District of Washington, and we added them as a strategic partner as well to represent the bases in that community. So this established the public-private academia collaboration and really a big tent organization for the movement. And so really, what we're seeking to do is to establish a cohesive region that operates efficiently and effectively. And that is enabled by digital technology and solutions. So that's really what we're seeking to do. The vision for what we're doing is to create an inclusive, sustainable, trusted, and secure digital environment that improves the way that we live, work, and play. And what we mean by digital environment is if you think about your phone, for example, and the operating system on your phone, you have probably either iOS or Android, and those operating systems allow you to download many different applications that work seamlessly and reliably on your phone. And in fact, the standards from those operating systems allow those apps to interoperate as well so that you can make restaurant reservations, and that integrates with your Uber application and your calendar and so forth. And so what we're seeking to achieve with this digital environment is to establish the operating system equivalent for the region. So think of Connected DMV as the operating system for the region that will allow the applications and digital solutions from all different sectors to proliferate and thrive. And that's really what we're doing with this movement. And so, we look at emerging technologies and the pace of change and disruption, and we feel it's very important to lead in this environment with all of these disruptions rather than to be led by it. And so that's really what Connected DMV is about. So with that background, let's get into some questions and hear some specifics about Connected DMV from our panelists who are all engaged in contributing to this work effort. So Melissa, starting with you, Connected DMV is about getting the region to operate more cohesively, as I described, and effectively in terms of how we live, work, and play. How important is collaboration, and how do you see the region working together or not to achieve this objective?
Sure. So obviously collaboration is incredibly important when you're talking about making the kind of transformative change that you're talking about. And as an infrastructure provider, right, really providing a platform where we can enable a lot of this, we recognize that we can't do it alone, that while we can maybe provide the underlying infrastructure platform and create the systems to help create that connectivity, it's going to take the innovation and solutions of lots of folks, right, to deliver electricity the way that we want it to be delivered, right, cleanly, effectively, efficiently, and affordably. And so I think some of the things you mentioned are really important, right? We need to maintain the reliability of the system. Mm-hmm. We need to maintain the security of the system, but we also need to do it in a way where we create additional access and opportunity so that folks can help deliver those next generation energy solutions to customers. We have the privilege of serving the district as well as Prince George's, Montgomery County. And when you think about it, there's kind of one other entity that serves Northern Virginia. So between kind of two companies working together and working through this collaborative process, we can really help drive a lot of the underlying infrastructure and help drive kind of a lot of the underlying, programs that can then help enable kind of those future solutions to thrive. But again, this is something where I think we're all going to have to come together and really figure out what are the 1, 2, or 3 goals we're trying to achieve regionally from an energy sustainability standpoint, whether it be carbon, whether it be reducing local air pollution, whether it be increasing efficiency, renewables, whatever those are, and then figure out, okay, we all have our goals and objectives, but then how can we come together to actually meet them in a really sort of efficient, seamless way?
I think that's really insightful, and I agree that it's really a change in mindset, right? To be thinking about this more as a region than as individuals or individual jurisdictions. in order to achieve common goals.
And that's the way we operate our system here, on sort of the Pepco side, right? It is an interconnected system, and utilities in general, when you think about it, we are a series of interconnected systems that have to work together. So we are very used to, as an industry, right, creating interoperability standards. Because electricity knows no boundaries. It flows across state lines, it flows through utility lines, and it all has to work together seamlessly so that the lights stay on for everybody. And so we really do have a lot of experience in doing that and doing it in a way where we can maintain the security of a system as well. So I think that we have a lot we can contribute to that.
And that infrastructure operates across jurisdictions, just like each and every one of us lives, works, and plays across jurisdictions. So I think that's exactly right. Pete, we anticipate hundreds of billions of dollars being invested here in regional digital infrastructure over the next several decades. What opportunities do you see for businesses and economic development for the region?
There's so many. Forgive me, I'm going to talk about healthcare, and I'll ask the audience a question. We have a set play in healthcare. It's called a face-to-face appointment with a doctor. Who's ever had one? Raise your hand. I'm going to guess everybody, right? But it's not so convenient. And now we have, and it harmonizes completely with Connected DMV, not just in healthcare, but I think the word applies broadly, sensorization. That is to say, in healthcare, we drag you in, hook you to an expensive machine, like an EKG machine, and for just that moment, we take a look at your heart, and then we try to deal with whatever might be amiss there. But really, you want to measure your heart all the time, right? Especially if you're in a risk group. And now that's possible. You see on my wrist, we have the Apple Watch, right? And Apple did a 400,000 patient trial to make this equivalent to that EKG machine you schlep in to see a doctor, right, so there's going to be so many sensors, so many adhesive sensors, and we have these now, right? We have a patch the size of an iPhone that you can wear on your chest, even when you shower, for 2 weeks. And that signal, if you have connectivity, can fly to our computers where we look for exception data, and then we may drag you in if and as you need it. So that's called prevention. However, this requires connectivity. We all have connectivity. I'm guessing we all have smartphones. Many of you are on them now. We have Wi-Fi in our homes. But how about the 702,000 folks who don't have habitual access to Wi-Fi? Their phone might not be on a data plan. So what's so interesting to me about Connected DMV is this inclusion word I know this conference is a lot about. How do we wash the area with connectivity, right? And you'd never have any hope of doing it as an individual jurisdiction. There's 24 that Carl mentioned. But if we came together, we could light up the area, and it would be a great boon for healthcare. Very convenient, would mean far better outcomes for patients, all of us, and many other industries as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
And I think that healthcare is a perfect example of that, but it cuts across all sectors as well, all of these different solutions and the opportunities, and from both a business perspective as well as from a public sector perspective.
Right.
I mean, we really think about this in a way as creating the next generation of public services and infrastructure.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Well, you mentioned inclusion, and Radha, we recognize that industry left to its own is going to seek the ideal commercial answer. And while that's a good thing, how important is it to also seek a comprehensive societal answer?
Sure. No, I mean, clearly very important, and I'm glad that Pete sort of raised some of these issues already. As we look at our region, there are 702,000 who are, digitally insecure, if you will, and not able to access their, across the 10-mile span in our area, there's a difference in life expectancy of 30 years. So that is, I'm not sure if you find that staggering, I find that not just staggering, but just unacceptable, especially in the capital of the most powerful country in the world. We see tremendous differences in terms of educational attainment. Again, in many cases, barely a high school diploma. In other cases, in counties, we're the region that has the highest number of graduate degrees in the country. And I can go on, whether it's food insecurity, which is something I work on, it's 20% difference within the broader region, the broader DMV as well. So we're certainly an area of growth, but an area of tremendous inequity as well. And what's exciting about Connected DMV is the opportunity to be able to right-size that playing field a little bit, to be able to provide everybody access and to be able to therefore allow people to be able to participate, to contribute, and to benefit from the growth that is projected to occur in this region. And so that's what's important to address here, not to have something that's exciting and innovative but only benefits a few. And I think the way the Greater Washington Board of Trade has looked at this is really to look very carefully at everyone in the region and to understand how 5G in a smart region has to apply to different groups of individuals, has to meet them where they are, so to speak. And so that is very, very important, because just saying, oh, we've got broadband, available everywhere, if you will, is not enough. It's, are people adopting it? Are they using it? Do they need extra support to be able to engage with it? Whether it's telehealth, whether it's educational opportunities. Many of us, of course, are seeing many companies relocate here, many companies grow, and you see, jobs advertised sort of left and right, if you will. But there are far too many people, actually slightly over 100,000 people, who are looking at those jobs and saying, I don't quite have the skills, to be able to participate and engage. So a Connected DMV bringing together the ability to support, to engage, to connect is going to be a very critical first step to enable greater, more inclusive economic growth in this region. And so there's a lot that's going on in all of the different working groups, et cetera, but really there's one that I'm leading, co-leading, that will really help push kind of what are the factors so that we're not waiting for just sort of a trickle-down effect for those who have been marginalized, if I can use that word, in the past, but really how 5G and sort of connected smart region movement will be able to support those, who have been disenfranchised quickly so that it allows them to become a part of the economic activity that's taking place in this region.
Yeah, that's terrific. And as we think about it, really what we're trying to do is we're trying to establish standards for the region across all of these different disciplines. And inclusion is really no different in terms of having a standard. One thing that we've been looking at is establishing a standard for how to address persons of differing ability in the smart region design. And thinking about working with the National Institutes of Blind and Easter Seals and other organizations to really set an Energy Star-like standard for that was put in place for appliances and apply that to persons of differing ability and how that gets designed into the smart region as well.
Absolutely.
Steve, we've been talking about smart cities and regions for quite some time, just generally. Is there more urgency today to move forward with this? And if so, what can we do to address that?
Yeah, I think you're bringing up the question of speed and how fast things need to be done. How much will they be done, and how do we prepare as a region to capitalize on all these tremendous opportunities while being aware of many of the challenges? And if one were to look at urgency or speed, you could look at that through a number of lenses when you're thinking about a connected region. And I think that when the first time we hear connected region, we've been talking about data and sensors, we think about the technology, and certainly that's moving very quickly, and I'll come back to that a little bit. But if you look at the region more broadly, which we have done as we've been trying to be strategic about our presence up here, there are things that are at the macro level that I think we need to think about in terms of the interfaces. The demographics, the growth of the area, and particularly if you break down the demographics and you look at the aging population and who's going to be living in this region and what are they going to need and how are they going to benefit so we don't leave people behind. That's one way to look at it. The speed of these changes in terms of what it means for workforce and the degree that you might have at age 22, how long does it last, and what does it mean to be in a connected region, and how fast is that going to change? From a perspective of technology, what I will tell you that one of the main reasons we're really increasing our presence up here, and I think all the universities that are based in this region are doing the same thing, is there's a desire to be embedded in the community, work with the community, and also from an industry perspective, we found our industrial partners want to be close to the source of talent. And so the closeness and proximity matters, particularly when you're looking at these technological fields that are moving so rapidly. We had at least two companies, and I'll paraphrase them because they told us the same thing in different meetings, was if you're not located near us, you're irrelevant in these areas like AI and sensors. And so we have made a strategic investment to have a significant presence up here. We think it's aligned with our own university mission, but also I think it's absolutely necessary because of the speed of these transformations. And I think from the Connected DMV perspective, Yogi Berra said it's really hard to make predictions, especially about the future. I think that's true, but I think in the day, there was time to react. What's happening right now is these changes. Who could have predicted? I'll just give you a few. I mean, I almost got run over by a scooter on the way into the building. Who would have predicted 5 years ago that you've been able to have your phone connect to a scooter in the middle of DC, right down the sidewalk? Who would have thought that all those things with your iPhone, your iWatch would have happened 10, 15 years ago? And it's just moving really, really fast. So part of the Connected DMV is we won't have the time to react. So the operating system, as you said, that allows us to put all these smart connected apps together is something I think we need to do as a community. There are some real opportunities, but there's challenges in terms of privacy, equity, inclusivity, that if we don't get right as a region, all the benefits that we think are going to happen may not be realized. We may have unintended consequences. So one of the things that really excites me about the Connected DMV movement, the Board of Trade is working with those partners to do something on, is that we are being prepared and we're thinking about this so that we can address these as they come up rather than being reactive, or maybe be a little more prospective in what we're trying to do as opposed to, hey, we have a new technology, how does it come in? So I think urgency is, if we're going to realize the benefits at the macro level, having the awareness of the speed of these transformations is something we all want to work together, and that's what's exciting about the Connected DMV approach.
Can I just build on that for a minute? Because I think something you said was really important. The speed of change is pretty incredible, and from a technology standpoint. And I think what's really exciting about the way that this movement is coming at it is it's not about a technology solution, right? But it's trying to identify what are the things we're trying to solve for. How can technology help that? But then starting with the foundation of saying, if we create the right foundation and the right interoperable foundation, right, and we have those foundational elements of the infrastructure that we need, as technology evolves, we can continue to plug it in and take advantage of the latest and greatest technology to solve the solution. But if we start with that sort of individual micro technology solution today, we might miss it. And we also might miss that ability to make it more inclusive, because as we've all seen, as a lot of these technologies move forward, right, they become cheaper, they become more accessible.
They're ubiquitous.
And they're everywhere. And so I think, part of what, you've designed a Board of Trade around this movement is that layering approach of what's foundational, what's needed, how do we create the standards and interoperability that will be lasting so that we can, solve those problems, but use whatever the technology is at the moment to do it. And I think that's a really interesting, different approach than some other movements I've seen.
Yeah, and just to add on that, we're building this innovation campus that is part of the Amazon HQ2 deal just across the river, just south of National. And it's a technology-based campus, innovation campus, but our whole center is human-centric design. And so if you read, and I'm not going to repeat it, but if you read our literature that's out there, we're talking about putting society and the human at the center of everything we do as we try to look at these technologies. And as technologists, of which I am one, we're not always good at that. So I think that this very deliberate approach to have humans and society and our community at this focus of what we're trying to do and why is really kind of unique.
And I like how you've each touched on some key themes in that, infrastructure is the focus here, and technology is an enabler. And innovation and speed of emerging technologies, it's going at the speed of light. But I think we would all agree that our regional infrastructure is not moving at the speed of light.
That's right.
And so, and then with the human-centric design and some of the points that Radha raised, putting the community and the human at the center of the design is critically important in order to get this right, because that's ultimately what it's all about.
Indeed.
So now that we understand a little bit more about Connected DMV, I was thinking it would be great if each of you would share a little bit about the solution groups that you chair, and some of what they're working on. And just to give a little bit of background on that, we have really over 300 individuals from 150 organizations that are participating in 18 different solution groups. And these groups represent verticals, which you can think of as your applications or solutions across each industry sector, 8 sectors, and then 10 horizontals that really represent the different capabilities and key components of this foundation and digital environment and infrastructure that we're talking about. So with that as background, Pete, do you want to start and talk about the solution group that you chair and maybe a highlight on what you're working on?
Yes, in the health group, and it relates to what I said before, how do we pivot to the home? So hospitals, not so easy to get to. It's an expensive form of care. Outpatient locations, they're not everywhere. Less expensive, but still expensive for many. So how do we enable so many new virtual modes of care? It gets right back to that connectivity issue, right? And how do we make this a highly attractive region for entrepreneurs to come in and make those offerings either alongside traditional healthcare or perhaps in competition with traditional healthcare. At the same time, you should know that there's something big that's happening in healthcare, and that's digital records liquidity, something we talk a lot about in this committee. You know, the history of healthcare is the data's been associated with the provider, and it's not so easy to take it somewhere else. To the extent that you want to do that, they give you a box of paper, which isn't so useful on the other end. But now Apple and soon Android, as I understand it, allow you to get the totality of your health records, digitally of course, from multiple providers on your phone. I have that now with Apple. For Android, that's allegedly imminent. Once again, though, we have to contemplate the digital divide here, right? There's a device divide even. Right. Not everybody has a smartphone, and then if you have a smartphone, are you connected? But if you have the totality of your records on your phone, so many new care scenarios become possible. Maybe you'll go see a doctor face-to-face, like I said at the top, or maybe you'll inject the totality of your records into a web app, a website or a mobile app with all the appropriate consent. And AI will run and give you an instant answer on your data, and then you can escalate to a human being as needed. So we're looking at all those possibilities, and there's every chance that DMV can be a leader, but we have to move, per Steve's point, very quickly.
Agreed.
So I chair the Energy and Resources Solutions Group, and it's a very robust, dynamic group. And what's interesting about that group is there's a lot of connectivity to a couple other groups that are out there. There's a transportation and mobility group as well as a resiliency and sustainability group. So we're very cognizant of the work that others are doing. But within our group, we've been really focused on identifying what are the actual energy resources that we have and that we have to consider if we want to create a sustainable energy future for the district, for the DMV, one that actually achieves, again, our decarbonization goals, our renewables goals, our local air quality goals, our clean water goals. And we recognize that there's a lot of different attributes across all of those segments that we really need to consider and keep in mind. So we've been doing a lot of work just first understanding the ecosystem we have, understanding the goals and objectives of the region across that ecosystem, and then trying to see, is there, again, sort of that first step that we can take that creates the foundation for us to get the information we need, to continue to monitor, to make sure we're meeting our goals and objectives, and how can we begin to build out that connected infrastructure to make it all work. And so we're starting down that path now. What are some of the foundational solutions and investments that we should be highlighting as a region and making as a region so that we can, again, get to the place where we are meeting our energy sustainability goals in a way that's efficient, cost-effective, as well as inclusive and providing benefits to everyone. And I think that's the piece where the intersection with the Transportation Mobility Group, there was a lot of talk about transportation electrification and how do we make that work? How can we make that work together? Again, regionally, we are a regional transit system. Looking at, again, how can we maybe leverage something like smart streetlights as a foundational infrastructure, because you can achieve multiple energy goals, but also they create the ability to provide those sensors and that connectivity through an existing infrastructure that's ubiquitous, right? That's in every neighborhood. So really looking for those tools, those things that we have, And then what do we need to do to make that next level investment to make it useful to create a further connectivity to help achieve some of the higher level goals. So that's kind of where we are and what we're working towards, and I think we're going to make some pretty good progress.
So I'm a co-chair of the Buildings and Urban Design Group, and a lot of the things that we're talking about up here interface with that. We're a vertical group in terms of the way we're organized, but as you can imagine, the built environment touches nearly everything we do. And we have, I'd say, 3 to 4 main work streams that we're looking at now. And they are wide and varied, and we're starting to intersect with the other groups now, as you might imagine. There's one right now that you probably don't think about until you think about it, and that's the process of development in a smarter way. Can the region lead the world in how you do permitting, inspection, things to get in a new way? What's it going to mean for a smart building in terms of inspection? What's it going to mean in terms of privacy? How can all the various authorities as part of the COG really lead the world and be a unified way around the whole region? So something that really is kind of way down in the weeds, but from our members on our solution group is very key to getting it going. And so how do we, how do you get community involvement? How do you, going back to speed, how do you shrink the amount of time to get community involvement for a project? So all of that's one area. Another area is resilience and sustainability. So many of the energy efficient things we're talking about, we've got wonderful examples in this region of net zero or actually net positive buildings. The American Geophysical Union building, for example, is a net zero building, which is really amazing. But it's done very discreetly. If we're trying to look at a region, whether it's transportation, how do we become sustainable and resilient as a region? And resilience can mean a lot of different things. We are in the nation's capital, and we have some unique assets around resiliency because of the federal government, and it's the seat of the national government here. So how do we bank on that for resilience and benefit the whole community? So that's another area. The third area, which is really exciting to me, is how do you design a livable area where people want to come and stay for all of our population? How do you use smart lighting for parks? How do you rethink about park usage if you have sensors and security is no longer an issue? How do you make those parks, and if you're going to design something, or just the streetscapes, how do you design a way that invites people in, brings people out, and achieves those kind of societal things that we want to have that were talked about in some of the opening remarks? We want to be the place where people feel a thriving community that is safe and engaging for a much bigger time than 9 to 5 and people going home. So that's the third area. And the fourth area is really thinking about what does this mean in terms of the interface with the workforce in the built environment. And this is something we have a number of folks in the construction industry in our group. What does construction look like? If we're talking about affordable housing, so that's another thrust too. Why is housing so expensive? Are there ways that we can be the leaders through technology and construction, for example, to lower the cost of construction and lower the cost of producing housing so that it becomes more affordable? Much in the way manufacturing over the last 2 to 3 decades has become smart and automated, are there ways that we can be the leader in smart construction to lower the price of this resilient and sustainable built environment we have? So we interface with a lot of the groups. We're just getting going now, and we're really trying to pique people's imaginations of how design of the built environment can realize a lot of these goals and go from these discrete, really cool demonstrations to something that would be more connected across the region and benefit the region as a whole.
Thank you. So I'm part of the social inclusion group, and as you've already heard from several others, there's so much interplay across the different groups. There has to be, given that we want to design something that is that's applicable to everyone. We have started by taking what others have mentioned already, a human-centered approach. So for far too long, we've had too many individuals being left out, or things being designed for a certain segment of the population, and then the assumption being that it will also work, for others. And so our group is actually comprised of nonprofits, but also lots of for-profit entities and different agencies within DC government, because there's some things that have worked very well, and we're also conscious of just not recreating and being able to learn from what's there. So we've really targeted both geographies, sub-geographies within our region that have experienced, less growth, that have not been participating as much, in our regional economy. Those who are sort of, insecure either for food, housing, health, digital, et cetera. We're really looking at those individuals and starting to understand sort of where they are, what do they prioritize. When we talk about a region that's connected and smart and interrelated, what does it mean for them, and what is it that they would like to see first? So what are very specific applications that will look to benefit them immediately? So those are some of the things that we're also trying to understand, get that feedback, and sort of share that, with the other groups as well. So that's one part of what we're doing. The second part is really trying to understand if technology across, all of its different areas has been made available and accessible, what is holding back adoption? What are some of the other barriers? So it's not enough to just say, we're making all of this available. It's still, there isn't that adoption. And so trying to really understand what those barriers are so that we don't sort of repeat that with other efforts that are ongoing and new things that would be made available. So that's the second part of what we're looking at. The third part is to take some of the emerging priorities that are coming from all of these other groups that are doing interesting things and say, terrific, but how might that need to be modified to be able to ensure that it is applicable and can be inclusive and engage the populations that perhaps have not been engaged before. So the idea of the sensors and being able to track sort of how you're doing and the various vital signs and indicators, terrific, but how do you do that, and where do you do that if someone doesn't have a smartphone? And so who might some of these groups need to partner with in the communities where they're sort of trusted groups, and where the majority of these populations might be coming to. So each individual might not have their own phone, but is there an ability to have a hub or something in certain areas where they can come and kind of connect to, and then be able to understand and get some input, et cetera. So trying to also forge the types of partnerships that might facilitate greater engagement right from the beginning. And lastly, all of these groups and all of our efforts will result in many organizations being suppliers and contractors and getting engaged in producing and delivering these services and technology and products. How do we ensure that these are inclusive of those that are smaller, may not have the capital, who are women-led or minority-led, so that the pie can be shared by a broader range of individuals versus a fewer range of individuals. So those are the types of things that we're thinking about in our group, and sort of understanding directly from those who are likely to be impacted and want to be impacted, instead of just designing and assuming that it will sort of meet their needs, as well as understanding who are the trusted partners in the, for individuals in these communities, and how do we connect them, to other partners that are developing and innovating, et cetera. So those are the types of things that we're looking at.
It strikes me that there's the experts that are involved in the solution groups are really addressing a lot of substantive topics that are helping to inform the design, and it's clear from this discussion that there's a lot of interrelation between all of those groups as well. So we appreciate all of the work that's going into it. We want to open it up for some questions from the audience at this point in time. Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. Arnold King, Business Consultant. My question is, as far as populated health, is any of the DMV familiar with populated health? And another one is the development of the digital workforce. Are you all familiar with the digital workforce? If not, then how are we going to learn about digital workforce? How are individuals concerned?
I'll take the health question, if that's okay. So many new models are springing up in healthcare. I mentioned the virtualization that's happening. But I think there's also new screening modalities that are so worth noting. So think about mammograms as an example. For women, we try to get you in typically to the hospital setting, and if you're willing to come into the hospital to have a mammogram done, which is inconvenient and awkward, it's highly likely we can find breast cancer before it might happen. However, I think I just said inconvenient and awkward in hospital, right? So how do we change our screening modality? There's so many things we screen on, and push it out into the community. So not everything needs to be virtual or should be virtual, but how do we atomize that human element that is screening. One thing we've been looking at that speaks completely to population health is barbershops, right? So many men have, especially men, have problems with blood pressure. And there's plenty of blood pressure cuffs maybe you can get in your house, but they're hard to administer, they're expensive, and then how do you float that data to a provider? So we've been experimenting with going into barbershops in the district, which folks habitually go to, as you know, and the barber, or more than one, knows how to administer the BP, and there's a way to get that data to a participating provider. So many of these approaches need to be reinvented, and if hospitals in some way become an anachronism, that could be very good if we can get out into the community setting.
I'll just add to that too, picking up on the health example, but then moving to workforce, which was the other component of your question. So we are seeing that a lot. Folks who we work with, 400,000 people who are food insecure across this region. They trust our sites, our partners, our engagement. If we were to deliver other services there, in addition to food, people would be receptive to those. So there's an interesting program that we're kicking off now for pregnant women, and many pregnant women east of the river are not going to get their wellness checks for a variety of reasons. So we're looking at different sort of centering groups, birthing centers, where the health care can be provided to them. And would food be an incentive? Can they, for every wellness check that you complete, you get 2 bags of groceries? So does that keep them coming back every month for the various checks? So it's these types of innovative things with an interesting set of partners, whether they're barber shops or food distribution sites, along with healthcare providers, that are really trying to bring that service to those who need it as well. It's the same thing from a workforce development perspective. We are seeing increasingly many people sign up for workforce development programs, whether it's a 1-week skill development or a 3-month skill development. But the rates of graduation are 1 in 4 in most cases. So lots of interesting experiments on what could keep people in those programs. What are the other barriers or challenges that they face? Is it food? Is it transport? Is it something else? And so by providing that, are you seeing higher rates of completion? And that's obviously what we're all looking to support as people go from minimum wage to a living wage. So I think there's some interesting partnerships and innovations out there that are being tested.
And I just wanted to build on that in terms of the workforce and skills development and sort of the collaborative approach. So we were privileged to collaborate with the district and others to stand up an infrastructure academy in the district. And we graduated a class recently. And I think the thing that was unique about that is it touches on a lot of what we talked about, which is it's not just come and take a class and then go home, right? There's a whole kind of wraparound piece to it of meeting folks where they are and bringing folks along so that they can be successful graduates. And it wasn't just training for training, right? It was demand-based training, and I think that's really important. So everybody that successfully completed the program actually received a job at the end. Because when you're thinking about skills development and training, it's an investment on people, right? If you have a job, even if it's not the job you might want, or if it's not a job that will turn into a career, it's a job. And so by leaving that job to, you don't want to leave that job on a leap of faith, right? You want to leave that job for something that if you successfully do your part, at the end of the day, there will be a job for you. And I think that really is a way we have to start thinking about training, is that sort of demand-based training. And the other thing is, and at PEPCO, something we work really hard at is starting earlier. If you're starting kind of post kind of high school age, it's almost too late to get folks interested in careers and then the education they need to actually take those skills tests. So we work really hard to try to support STEM education at younger and younger and younger ages and really integrate it in everything that we're doing, and trying to really, from our partnership we have with Bright Beginnings all the way up through middle school and high schools and internship programs, because at the end of the day, you need folks interested, excited, but also prepared to then participate in, whether it's a skills program, a 2 years college, a 4-year college, whatever it might be.
Yeah, and just add a little bit of that from a university perspective, going back to the comments I made earlier about speed. We're preparing students today for jobs that don't exist. Mm-hmm. Many of you in this room are probably in jobs that did not exist when you were in K through 12 or in college. So one of the things that's very important is having a continual conversation across the educational enterprise with employers, private sector employers, government employers, and doing that in a way that allows the rapidity for having adjustments to curricula. And we need to do that at scale. So how do we have partnerships? Generally, universities have worked with partners one-on-one. So we would come to PEPCO or someone say, what do you need to have for your workforce? What we're finding is that, at least at the university level, there's a common set. So if you amplify those discussions by bringing a group together, which hopefully we'll do a little bit in this, the Connected DMV, universities as a collection and employers as a collection understand what those needs are going to be, and you build a framework to have those conversations. Universities are fairly blessed that we are very long-standing institutions. This week, Virginia Tech celebrated 147 years. You'd be hard-pressed to find other parts of society that are have that long-term view. So building that conversation into the things that are evolving in a more rapid rate is something I think is very important to help address your workforce issues across the K through 12, undergraduate and postgraduate environments.
Other questions? Yes.
I had a question. Hi, my name is Raj, and I'm a parent living in DC. I had a question about connectivity and cohesion. How do we build that in our education system when it's pretty much segregated? So does segregation matter when it comes to building a connected and cohesive community in DC particularly?
Steve?
I'll try to answer. I mean, as best I can from my perspective, which is, again, it's just one part of it. I think you raise an important point that there's the inclusivity and availability education for everybody's important for everyone to thrive. And we heard a little bit about inclusivity and making sure that we don't have disparate access or disparate outcomes. I can speak for my own university in that we are a land grant, and our mission is to be inclusive and educate the widest swath as we can. Now, the K through 12 system, I think, is probably what you're talking about in DC, and I'm less familiar with that, but I would say certainly from our perspective at Virginia Tech, inclusivity and diversity and providing the broadest set of access at the university level is very important, and thus we have partnered in the state of Virginia with a number of the K through 12 systems as part of our diversity and inclusivity approach, and we've had the most diverse class across a number of measures in our freshman class this year. Our goals are stated on our website are very ambitious in terms of how we want to grow access to first-time college students and those from disadvantaged groups. So we're committed to that at our university, but I think you raise a good point. If you don't think of everybody and have that inclusive, you won't raise, and you'll have this bifurcation of and disparate outcomes. I'm not sure if others on the panel have things to add on maybe the K through 12 specifically in DC. Anybody? Thoughts?
So I would say, I think part of what we're also, when we're talking about Connected DMV, and one of the things that we're very cognizant of is actually literally the connectivity. And one of the things that we've been focused on, and actually I think the thing that started Connected DMV was actually, and we touched on it a bit on the panel, was there is a disparity not just in access, but actually the ability to literally connect and take advantage of, right, what are the resources that are out there. And so one of the things that I think this whole movement started off on was actually Wi-Fi access, free Wi-Fi access. And how do we actually create a network that can create connections, not just sort of in downtown DC, but across the District of Columbia, including, you know, both sides of the river as well as into the broader DMV, because I think one of the things we recognized was that without that access and that ability to maintain that connectivity going through, some of the issues that we're seeing from an educational standpoint, there is no access to that, right? So some of what the great equalizer can be, right, or can provide different optionality and different opportunity is what you can get through the internet and being connected. But if you can't do that, and you can't do that on a sustained basis, that's a problem. And so part of what the movement was focused on was how do we actually create that in a way that's free that's accessible, but that isn't just, I have to stand in this one spot all the time, and how can we integrate and use actually the school system to help do that? Because that was a big thing that we talked about, and that was part of starting to bring at the university level, but then figuring out how do we actually drive that down to the K through 12 level as well. So that is something that I know we're all talking about within the Connected DMV discussion.
And that's a perfect example of what we mean by narrowing the digital divide as well. We probably have time for, well, I think we're pretty much right at time now. Okay. Well, great. Thanks everyone on the panel for your contributions, both to Connected DMV, your time commitment to this panel, and bringing your expertise to this. And thanks to all of you for your interest. We really appreciate it.
A quick announcement. Our next panel will start at 10:30. And also I want to encourage folks to use social media, hashtag WeDC. Thank you.